I'm here today to show you the Good Friday triptych that adorns Redeemer's altar in Fort Wayne. It was created by John Rahoff. So before we get to the triptych itself, we recognize that the altar is the chief symbol in the church of Christ's sacrifice and of his resurrection. It is, of course, an altar where sacrifices were offered up to God, but it is also a table from which comes to us the Holy Communion, the very risen body and blood of Jesus. The triptych on the front is the most dramatic piece of it, but it's sort of a piece of performance art. It's the Good Friday triptych because it's only revealed on Good Friday, or more technically, at the end of the Maundy Thursday service when the altar is stripped, and then it is covered back up again at the Easter Vigil when the gold vestments are put on the altar. So it's only really exposed mainly on Good Friday. And the idea is that on Good Friday, we are going to be bold enough to really face as directly as we might, by the blood of Christ, the consequences of our sin. Not only his death, but the death that we should have suffered, which Adam and Eve first ushered in. So there's very little gospel symbolism in the triptych itself. That's because the altar itself is the idea of the gospel. And on the top of the altar, there are 5 crosses, one for each of the wounds of Christ. And again, the Holy Communion sits on top of it, and it's covered. And the whole idea is that we're covered by the righteousness of Christ and that death is covered up. So that's why it's not a cross or lots of crosses and things on the front. So let's talk about Rahoff's work here. Many people have described Rahoff's work as being in the realm of magic realism. He refuses to sort of give a description of his own art, but I think they're onto something. So it's realistic, but it's also heavily stylized. He also chose to do this in this Flemish style that's called grisaille, which is monochromatic. So there's not a lot of colors in this, and it's painted flat, of course, but it's invoking carved statues. So he wanted it to not be flashy, to not be too colorful, again, because it's going to be exposed on Good Friday. It's not that it's not meant to be beautiful, but it's not meant to be evocative of joy and so forth. It's driven, of course, by the passage, Romans 5:12, which he's included, and that's been, looks like inscribed on a sort of a tombstone there. Through one man, sin entered the world, and death through sin, and thus death spread to all men because all sinned. So very clearly in the first panel, we have Adam and Eve in the garden, Eve eating the fruit and handing it to Adam. And then on the last panel, we have them being expelled from the garden. And in the middle, we have this skull, this death that is overcome by Christ. There are some details in the paintings that are quite nice. By the way, Rahoff never likes to explain his paintings. You have to sort of figure it out on your own. But in any case, here we've got a number of nice details. In the first one, we've got this idea from the patristic literature that the fruit in the Garden of Eden was not an apple, but it was grapes. And the idea with it being grapes is that originally grapes grew on trees, and then just like the snake was cursed to crawl on the ground, that grapes, if they aren't on a trellis, like on a cross, they would be laying across the ground. And they also only really give their fruit to men when they're crushed. And of course, ultimately find their highest expression in delivering to us the blood of Christ. So you have that idea conveyed there. You have Adam and Eve without belly buttons. The children always enjoy that. The leaves are falling, so there's this idea that the tree is dying, but also strategically placed for the sake of modesty. The snake, I love the snake, is not an ordinary snake, but some sort of supernatural dragon monster kind of snake. So those are the main details there in the garden. Then when you get to the final panel, we do have some really nice things there. The angel, of course, is again very stylized and very dramatic. The light is coming from the garden, right, from the angel himself, and so the shadows. There's also Eve, there's crying there, the first of millions of human tears that Eve sheds as she's cast out of the garden. Of course, they're clothed in the garments, so there is some gospel idea there. God the Father himself has sacrificed, or God the Son has made a sacrifice for them that covers their shame, but they are driven out. We do have the little St. Andrew's cross with that little tree with the sprout, of course, the Isaiah passage there, out of the root of Jesse. You also have two trees in the garden behind the garden wall, and they're pine trees, and I think very obviously kind of Christmas trees. So the tree of the knowledge of good and evil that sort of destroyed us, but then also the tree of life. And the garden wall, it's subtle, but it has a gate. There's two doors there. There is a way back into this garden, even though they've been cast out. So there's a lot of little subtle details in this that are just delicious and beautiful. And to sit here for 3 hours on Good Friday and to have this before us is a wonderful aid to meditation and to think about what we've done. So that's the artwork by John Rahoff. We're very thankful to have it. It was given to him, to us, as a gift, as a memorial for one of our saints. So there we go.